All right, perfect. This is so exciting, guys. Welcome, beloved ones. You are with me in the Desert Heart Sanctuary of Joan of Angels in my little cannabis art corner where I paint divine beings and channel their messages for you and for me and for humanity, where I do believe the cannabis plant has shared with me that it is a powerful ally in our spiritual growth, in our consciousness, in our daily living, and yes, even in our relationships, our physical vitality, and on every aspect. And that is why we call it the true miracle plant. It is not a drug, it is a plant, and plants, as you know, have an ability to store harmony for humans. We store harmony in body, we store harmony in soul, we restore harmony in thoughts, and restore harmony even for others on the planet. And thus it is a sacred plant. And as we spoke last week, it was one of the 5 sacred plants in the Hindu religion and was also the ally of Lord Shiva. So I'm going to continue reading from the Cannabis and Spiritual Practice, along with a few commentaries. I'm going to check to see if I can see you on the Facebook page without kind of upsetting the harmony of everything. So let's see how that would work as we start to do this so I can see what your comments are. My interest in spiritual living and the 420 spiritual living is that last summer I was told by my guides that I was here to literally start a movement, a consciousness movement. And that was very powerful, extremely. And when I woke up the next day, I was literally shown that I should start this group, 420 Spiritual Living. So I did. I painted the cannabis art and I began 420 Spiritual Living. When I started to read this book, I realized I didn't want to share it. I mean, I didn't want to keep it all to myself. My intention is to share it. And you know that I am an oracle. I do readings for people. I teach people how to calm down, how to reach spirit, how to breathe, how to remember who you are. And to me, this is an amazing plant ally, okay? So for those of us drawn to embracing cannabis as a plant ally, some of the things this book really does go over is how to do that, okay? So this is a book about Buddhist practice, but we are going to expand it a little bit. But the primary focus of Buddhist practice is to calm the turbulence of the mind with its concerns, worries, and out of control thoughts that subvert our happiness and distort our understanding of how reality is constructed. So if we can quiet the surface waves of unbidden thoughts and replace the stormy sea, here we go, people. Okay, yes, welcome guys. It's going to be up to you if you want to have your video on or off. I just want you to know I might share this video out. So if you want it off, go to off. Also, you can go to settings and change your name if you wanted to. All right, so greetings. Would you like to introduce yourself, either of you? If yes, just unmute yourself. If no, we'll just continue.
Hey, yes.
Nice to see you. I'm so glad.
I'm here. It's Canella. I'm here, Joan. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yay.
So I think I realized that the sound was off, so I'm not even sure if anyone heard the sound up until now. So
just now.
any comments? You want to give your name, a reason you're here?
Hi, Joan. This is Tina Marie. Love you. I'm here because you always have interesting programs to learn.
All right. I love it. I love it. And Canella?
Well, first off, Tina Marie, it's nice to have a face to the name because I see you on Monday nights.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.
And secondly is, yeah, like I said, Joan, you started this story last week, and when we had our discussions later on, it was things that, especially the inspiration and taking a few minutes to hold in, your smoke when you're doing ganja, is to get yourself connected and get into all the little arteries and capillaries. We always just thought it was a habit of maybe it would help your high, but and that gets to a whole nother meaning of helping your high. So
well, yeah, I love that. That came from Canella, everyone. But the other thing I like about it too is that nowadays they're saying you don't have to do that. And I thought, well, God, that doesn't do it for me, because I feel there's a spiritual component of breathing in and breathing out. And, I don't want to, I like to make a ritual out of it. So, all right. Okay, so we're going to read on, and then I'll stop, take commentary, or, when I take a break. So how are we going to do this? You're going to raise your hand. You know how to raise your hand, ladies? If you click manage participants, then you will see there's a place you can raise your hand.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's pretty easy. All right.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, so the primary focus of Buddhist practice is to calm the turbulence of your mind with its concerns, worries, and out of control thoughts that subvert our happiness and distort our understanding of how reality is constructed. If we can quiet the surface waves of unbidden thoughts and replace the stormy seas of the mind with the mirror-like stillness of a windless lake, then we can return to the silent presence found in the very center of our center. You may think your mind is already at peace, but be honest with yourself. Doesn't your mind constantly fill with thought after thought, silent pronouncements that only you can hear, a constantly generating force field of background voices, all of them vying for your attention and keeping you from ever settling back down into the silent place in the middle of your body? To calm the mind is to quiet the turbulent waves of thought that keep crashing on the shores of your silence, and to become aware of what's happening right now in your field of vision, sound, touch, and perhaps to a lesser degree, smell and taste as well. So long as you're tossed around by stormy waves of thought, you lose awareness of what you can see and hear, of the feeling presence of the body, of the subtler smells and tastes that comprise the level of physical activity that most people would refer to as the real world. The current popularity in the West of the Buddhist Dharma, that is its teachings and practices, is largely a function of our growing awareness that we're both lost in thought and out of touch with the world of our senses. While conscious creative thought is one of the extraordinary achievements of our species, the creative unleashing of thoughts has not come without a shadowy downside. Conscious creative thinking is one thing, but the out of control, semi-conscious ramblings of thought that form the internal, involuntarily monologue of the mind, that voice inside your head that sounds quite like your voice, but heard from a muffled distance, is another. And thoughts can be a pernicious thing. Don't believe everything your mind thinks, cautions a current bumper sticker. So, conscious, creatively inspired thought can enhance our lives and by extension all of humanity, but the involuntary monologue of the mind or the parade of random thought we have no control over is generally not so inspired. So well said. On the contrary, it has a natural inclination for rapid fire bursts, one thought after the other, many of which reflect artificial beliefs, biases, and fears that have little to do with the reality of our understanding of what's actually going on around us, making it hard to know how to interact with get along with, or even love our fellow humans. Several thousand years ago, humans first started becoming aware of voices inside their heads, a seminal moment in our evolution that Julian Jaynes writes of in his groundbreaking Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. This new awareness moved the focus of human experience upward from our belly into our head, where these voices apparently came from and where they had taken up residence. At first, the appearance of these voices was considered a divine occurrence that only happened to a few select people who were looked upon as the new priests of the culture. Slowly, this new faculty became far more commonplace until it has evolved over time into our contemporary inability to stop the thinking mind from issuing its increasingly banal and irritating pronouncements. If in a time long ago the appearances of voices was an unusual occurrence, the torrent of thoughts that have taken up residence in our head is anything but. And so, we block our awareness of it so as not to hear the offending din, like a TV set that's been left on too long, for so long that we manage not to hear its broadcast. Quoting Sasaki Roshi, the 20th century Zen teacher, used to say that Buddha is the center of gravity. For a physical object that is tall and narrow, with a base of support, think skyscrapers, giant redwood trees, and similarly structured human beings, the center of gravity is halfway up the length or the height of those structures. If it's any higher than that, and especially if it's all the way at the top of the structure becomes unstable. So because of our non-stop thinking, our center of gravity has risen precariously upward into our head, and this top heaviness, Roshi implies, is the source of our modern angst. The awakened state that the Buddha says is everyone's birthright is a functioning of lowering the center of gravity back down into the belly, where sensation is grounded and thoughts don't intrude. But how do we go about lowering ourselves back down and essentially waking up? In other words, back down from our thoughts, so that thoughts that are cascading in our head randomly and without stop, that's actually literally preventing us from connecting to spirit, and we have to go back down. So this is where Buddhist practice comes in to show the way back to ourselves. Okay? So he talks about breath as one of the ways to calm our mind. But then he continues and goes on now to talk about how we can do this. All right? So remembering last week, we also talked a little bit about intoxicants and how some spiritual practices say you cannot use intoxicants in your practice. So he goes on and he talks about refrain from taking intoxicants. He says, and finally we get to the fifth precept, to refrain from taking intoxicating substances. For the subject of this book, the precept to abstain from intoxicants, which can be broadly defined as anything you take into your body that artificially affects and alters how you experience yourself in the moment, is the most controversial of all the precepts and requires the most examination and introspection, as the spiritual practices of Shiva that we will be exploring in the second part of the book that can be powerfully catalyzed and supported by ingesting cannabis. Okay, so the spiritual practices of Shiva can actually be supported through cannabis, and I'm thinking one of those is we can calm our mind, all those random thoughts. Our way through this dilemma, an apparent contradiction, will be to see how the goals of Buddhist and Shaivite practices, also completely compatible and supportive of each other, are also different. and what is legitimately appropriate in one area of practice may not be in the other. The precept, of course, does not isolate cannabis as the offending intoxicant. It paints the world of potentially intoxicating substances with a wide brush, and it couldn't be clearer. Avoid whatever intoxicates you, whatever alters the natural condition of your mind and body. Drugs, alcohol, any addictive substances, or by extension, any addictive behavior, whatever. Okay. So as Buddhism comes to the individualistic, positive societies and socially liberal cultures of the West, it is this fifth precept that causes the most confusion and arouses the most questioning. The severity of the precepts appears to descend for most people from the first precept down to the fifth. Taking another person's life is clearly the most odious, okay? Both from a perspective of communal living and individual enlightenment, okay? And stealing, of course, and sexual misconduct, rape, okay? So in a society that promotes individual freedom, those actions violate our commitment to communal freedom, okay? Now, the fourth precept is that of lying. So it's when we get to the fourth precept that things start becoming murkier, as most people simply can't view the telling of a little fib every once in a while as just being in the plain category of killing someone, taking someone's life. So my mother, that's the author's mother, for example, believed that so long as what you're saying doesn't hurt another person, it's the truth. So now we're talking about the law of telling the truth here. So when we reach the fifth precept, okay, which is that we refrain from taking intoxicants, okay, many people view an occasional lapse as just a minor misstep, not a serious crime. While many Buddhist scholars in the West embrace all five precepts equally, many people who consider themselves Buddhists don't rigidly adhere to this last precept at all. Alcohol, in all its many forms, is the preferred intoxicant of Western Buddhism, much as it's the preferred intoxicant of Western culture in general. Cannabis, however, even for those Buddhists who enjoy their occasional or even regular alcoholic beverage, is still generally incompatible with Dharma practice. Many Western Buddhists enjoy an alcoholic drink, far fewer get high on cannabis. So, from the perspective of a teaching that seeks to shift your mind from turbulence to quiescence, the problem with alcohol is that it supports the former and undermines the latter. A quiescent mind aligned with the breath, as Canella was sharing with us, and aware of the passing show in the present, offers a very different kind of release, excitement, and high from the mind of someone who has had several drinks too many and is acting out as the life of the party. Never mind the mean drunk at the bar or the endlessly obnoxious raconteur jabbering on and on about all of life's miseries or personal triumphs. If you dive so deeply into the practice of becoming aware of breath that you and your breath become as one, you come to understand that such awareness is a 24/7 project, not something you can explore just in a formal practice, as beneficial and supportive as that is, and ignored for the rest of the day. Once you start experiencing the wonder of a mind that never separates itself from the breath, a mind that stays grounded in the awareness of the sensory realities of this moment, you see that losing that awareness, even for just a few short breaths at a time, just plain hurts. And gradually, the joys of inebriation and its consequences as well start to look a lot less appealing. Whew. Cannabis. Okay, just going to check the website for a second, see if anyone's here. Nope, we're good. Cannabis, on the other hand, has an effect on the body and mind that differs significantly from that of alcohol. From the perspective of Buddhist Dharma, the central problem with cannabis is that it can dramatically heighten awareness of the feeling presence of the body and the workings of the mind, which in itself shouldn't sound like a problem for a path of practices designed to do just that. However, if you're not consciously working with intentional practices that not only bring body and mind to greater awareness, but also support the releasing of any unnecessary tension that gets revealed, then cannabis may ironically end up reinforcing these unconscious patterns through granting you a temporary reprieve from them. The body, though initially relaxed, can stay further locked in its underlying pattern if those patterns are not consciously addressed into, felt into, and let go. So, in truth, it's not just the substance itself that the Dharma teachings are reacting to. It is the all too common tendency to abuse these substances and forfeit, even if only temporarily, a calm presence of mind with a clear and continuous perception of present moment reality, the sound, sights, and sensation, and the flow of breath. For far too many people, the ability to limit their alcoholic intake is about on par with their ability to have only one salty chip, which the food industry knows you're almost genetically programmed not to do, right? You can't just have one potato chip. And while there are many people, Dharma practitioner or not, for whom cannabis simply doesn't work, there are others for whom it doesn't only just not work, but it works very badly indeed. So it's important for those of us who see cannabis as a powerful tool and a helper, a plant of the earth that expands and enhances spiritual consciousness and earthly life, to acknowledge this. Just as there are cannabis casualties from heroin, alcohol, and crystal meth, yes, there are people whose lives have been turned upside down by their addiction to cannabis, okay? So, cannabis can stimulate thought. Meditation practices seek to slow thoughts down. Conversely, certain strains of cannabis can make the body sleepy. Meditation seeks to wake the body, both mind and body, from its slumber. Cannabis makes it easier to tolerate circumstances of our life, but meditation aims to transform your relationship with these circumstances. So cannabis often makes us want to move our body. Buddhist Dharma sits us down for long hours, days, and weeks. Thus, they are two different energies. The Dharma also doesn't much like the uncommon response of social paranoia that cannabis makes some people feel in the presence of others, nor does it view as positive the other all too common response of people becoming proverbial couch potatoes. So cannabis accentuates whatever is going on for you. And if you're not exploring conscious practices that use cannabis as a spiritual sacrament, then from a Buddhist practice perspective, you may experience a temporary relief and relaxation, but unwittingly contribute to the holding pattern of tension in your body or the stranglehold of thoughts in your mind. What we're about to explore in the second part of this book is different spiritual perspective on cannabis. One that not only doesn't demonize its effect, but views it, okay, as catalytically supportive of its practice, which is the way I support it, okay?
Hallelujah.
So I'm just going to finish this page, and then we'll talk about it. So if you want to know what the Buddha knew, then you have to do what the Buddha did. And the same holds true for Shiva. Well, we know Shiva loved bang. If you want to know what Shiva knew, you have to do what Shiva did. And for Shiva, the ingestion of cannabis in the form of bang, a drink made by crushing and liquefying cannabis, apparently played an integral role in his discovery of the body-oriented practices of dance and yoga. So millions of Hindus worship Shiva as one of the holy trinities of the gods of the universe. But just worshiping Shiva without exploring his practices and the substances that promote his practice won't give you any more awakening than with worshiping the Buddha, but not entering into the rigorous discipline of meditation. So, having said that, I want to reiterate that while the practices I'm about to present in the second half of the book can be supported by the ingestion of cannabis, they can be entered and explored as well by Buddhists who also honor the fifth precepts by abstaining from intoxicating substances. You don't have to get high to explore these spiritual potent practices. You don't have to use cannabis. But if you are someone who is drawn to cannabis and has found it works for you, then it enhances your life, then these practices I'll encourage you to explore. Practices that can take you higher into a realm of awareness that may or may not be anywhere nearly so accessible to you when you don't partake of the sacrament of Shiva. Whew. Any comments, thoughts, comments, possible feedback, ideas?
I'll start. I'll raise my own hand. Just that last thing is like the opportunity to learn new practices, or what I'm getting at this point in life is that you hear something that you might have heard a while ago, and then all of a sudden there's new experiences, it takes on another level. The opportunity to learn new practices, or what I'm getting at this point in life is that you hear something that you might have heard a while ago, and then all of a sudden there's new experiences, it takes on another level. The audio is terrible.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden there's new experiences, it takes on another level.
Okay, that's interesting.
The audio is terrible.
Hold on. Let's see something.
So turn off your mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you now.
Are we echoing now?
So turn off your mute.
What was that?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay. So I'm wondering if it's because I tried to hop on Facebook to see what was going on.
Can hear you now.
Yeah, of course. Are we echoing now? What was that? Okay, it's me trying to see the questions on Facebook. So I'm wondering if it's because I tried to hop on Facebook to see what was going on. Oh my God, this is a nightmare. Hold on. Are we echoing now? Stop it. Go away. Okay, good. So I cannot see anyone on Facebook to see what's going on. And I humbly apologize. Next time I'll use the other browser, which is harder for me to have guests on, but it's easier for me to see what you're doing without causing me to have my echo. But hold on, let's see. I mean, I should be able to see you. You're not even showing up on my Facebook page somehow. Okay, there you are. Okay, good. All right, so we didn't get any comments on that, but anyway, hello, hi. Any comments on it, Tina, for yourself, Tina Marie?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. I've watched with my one cousin. She's like a niece to me, but she's my cousin. And with her taking the cannabis, she does smoke it, but I've seen her anxiety levels go from being off the wall to where she's so calm that she's actually learned to accept the spirituality part of it, where she's really growing.
That's a really good commentary. It's so sad that cannabis has the stigma it has, because actually, when I talk miracles, cannabis is a miracle, both for physical health, mental health, spiritual health, happiness, health. You know, you don't find any pharmaceutical drug that can cure your body and heal your soul like cannabis can. So that makes me very happy. Okay. And I'm a big proponent. First of all, I really, tomorrow or Thursday, I hop online on a program of cannabis for autism, because I really love finding out the ways to use cannabis for these conditions that were previously almost untreatable. But I'm very equally passionate on connecting to the spiritual aspects of cannabis, as doing almost as Will Johnson says in his book, as really harnessing, you know, those thoughts that are random in your mind and creating a way to let them go, so that you can then open a pathway to sort of almost a different avenue, which is more of an awakening and more of an ability to hear the voices of spirit, easier in many ways to even see your pathway laid out for you. So this taking in of the breath in cannabis, regardless of what practice you have, be it Buddhist or be it your own spiritual practice of invoking spirit, but when you breathe it in, you have an ability to connect. Now, not everyone can do that, as Tina Marie says, you know, like it takes practice. As Will was saying, there's people who cannot do that. And what that tells me is that it also depends on the strain of cannabis and the terpenes or the terpenes or the cannabinoids that are in cannabis. So there's actual components of cannabis that could determine your experience as well. If you know what I mean. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. Well, I thought I would keep the book club to an hour. And do you guys want to continue next week?
Sounds good to me, Joan.
Okay, fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. I'm skipping around in the book because I don't want to read the whole thing, but I really am excited to dive in and understand that there's practices that are so aligned with my thinking, 420 spiritual living, you know, how to have a conscious practice. All right. I'm going to keep it up on the page here. I love you. And I'll see you next week. I'll send you the link for next week. Right before.
Okay.
Okay, wait,
Hi,
Joan,
Janella. Nice to meet you.
truly nice
Yeah.
to meet you also, Tina Marie. Bye-bye.
You're
Joan,
both good friends of mine. I love you both.
Yeah.
Bye.
bye. Joan, I want to talk to you about the autism.
Okay, do you want to talk now before we hang up? We can talk now.
Yeah, because my good friend has a nephew that's autistic. So is it something that he could tune into, or I can tune into and watch, depending on what time it is?
So it's an industry event. It's more of an industry event. I'm not sure it's for lay people.
Okay.
I could send you the link, I suppose. I can send you the email. And hold on. It's kind of, so you could try it. It's actually for industry, but you know, whatever. Okay. Here you go.
Hey, I'm industry.
All right. Okay, loves. This is wonderful. And I love you both. And I love you all, anyone who's going to listen to this. And we'll be 420 next Tuesday. Bye.
Wonderful. Congratulations for Thursday. Love you. Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.